Hello friends, holiday break is here, so I'm going to have a little bit of time off over the next couple weeks, and I hope to get caught up on some stuff. Plenty to talk about. In fact, I've got a list. I won't go through the list because then I won't be committed to actually doing anything. But one of the things that's high on my list is to continue the conversation about Donnelly's white Atlantis, or race in Atlantis according to Donnelly. So I had the back and forth with Dan Richards. I had to set it aside for a little while, but as I've been thinking about it, I think I'm going to talk about it in 3 parts, 3 different questions, and try to sort some of this out. So issue number 1, I'd like to address the historical context in which Donnelly is writing, specifically the idea of Aryanism and where that comes from. This is what Dan says.
The term Aryan was not a loaded term at this point. The seeds had been planted, and in a few more decades, the term would start to gain the negative connotations it has now. But really, that kind of took off because of some weird guy with a funny mustache, and he liked like these angry windmills, it looks like, and stuff. He kind of made a mess of Europe in the 40s. You might know the guy, right?
So the idea that Aryanism and white supremacy connected to the concept of the Aryans wasn't really a thing until Hitler came along is not correct. And I touched a little bit on that in my video, and Dan just kind of brushed it off and didn't really address it. But I'm going to get into it more because it dates to the mid-1800s, decades before Donnelly uses the term Aryan, so it's relevant. If Donnelly had never written his book about Atlantis, all this other stuff would have still been there. So it's a fair question what Donnelly meant by Aryan. And I think that you have to go back and develop that context, which sets the table to be able to ask that question honestly. So that's point number 1. And point number 2 is the claim by Richards that there could have been no Aryans in Atlantis, and that Donnelly wasn't talking about Aryans in Atlantis. And this is what he says on that.
200 years ago, a guy writing about Atlantis would not have thought it was an Aryan Atlantis because Aryans didn't exist until after Noah. It was one of Noah's sons. So before the flood, there was no Aryans. So anytime somebody says that this old school shit believes in Aryan, all you have to do is scratch the surface and you'll find that's not the case at all.
So Donnelly uses the term Aryan a lot. As I said in my first video, he uses it over 100 times in that book. So it's worth asking, A, how is he using it? What did he mean by it? And then 2, in his kind of historical framework of where Aryans come from, how is that related to Atlantis? Were there Aryans on Atlantis or not? So that's the second question. And question number 3, which is the one that got us here in the first place, is did Donnelly believe in a white Atlantis or not?
Ignatius Donnelly did not believe in a white Atlantis. Most importantly, he did not believe in a white Atlantis.
He certainly believed in some white Atlanteans. Were there other peoples on Atlantis? What were the relationships between these various races, and so on and so forth? And the answers to this are pretty much contained within Donnelly. Dan brought up a quote or two, one or two, suggesting that Atlantis had a quote-unquote composite population. It's worth going and looking at the context of those quotes, how they relate to other parts of the book, and trying to flesh this out a little bit more. Who were these white Atlanteans? What was the relationship to the other peoples of Atlantis and other peoples around the world? So that will be part 3. So I am on break. My office is a pit. I've got a lot of other stuff I want to do, but I hope to get to at least, I'll guarantee that I will do one of those, at least the Aryanism one. I can get that one done. Hopefully 2, maybe even all 3. Who knows? Maybe I'll just spend the week sitting here, with a glass of Jim Beam and a cigar talking about white Atlanteans. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe all your dreams will come true. Did you put that on your Christmas list? Anyway, what is today? 22nd? All right. Onward. Hope you have a good Sunday. Bye-bye.